Hello everyone, welcome to Powerline. I'm your host Skyknight, and I'm here with my buddy Kris, and he is about to do a deck profile on his Murakumo build. Go!
Hi everyone. This is a deck that I really enjoyed building in set 3, and it's a lot of fun. It's a little undercredited because of Diablo being a thing out there, where Murakumo don't focus on having like 3 rear guards, so they end up getting killed by Diablo a lot, and it's very frustrating. But this deck is a lot of fun to play.
As you can hear, he got the hype train!
I wish I had the hype train. The hype train is so fun. So for this deck, my starter is Stealth Rogue. Can't even see its name, but it's Generation Break 1. At the beginning of your main phase, you Soul Blast 1, and you return it to your hand. Then you check the top 3 cards of your deck, and you play a card from there, and at the end it goes back to the deck. It's really good when you stride for your first stride, because your Heartbreak can clone 1 unit on the field. So if you clone this card, you get 2 of them from the deck. You get 2 rear guards for free from their effects, and then they return to your hand. And since they change state in the game, like returning to your hand or going to the graveyard, they don't return back to the bottom. So on your stride turn, you just added 2 more grade 0s to your hand that have 10k shield that you can use for later for like a multiple copy thing for your restand. I chose this heal trigger because she's really cute and adorable. 4 heals because you don't want to die, and there's no point in not playing heals. They're just useful no matter what happens with them. I play 8 crit, 4 vanilla, and 4 of the 4k that gives 3k when you move into the soul. It's kind of useful, but most of the time it's not really useful. It's only good if you're trying to make like cross ride numbers. You're making 21k columns because you can, or you need an extra soul because you need this ready for next turn. But like I said, it's just that 3k can sometimes matter when you're fighting cross rides or your numbers aren't that strong. The most useful trigger in this whole deck is this stand trigger. Like, they got a really big boost with this stand trigger in this pack, because when it's placed at GB1, you select a unit on your field, you clone up to 2 copies of that unit from your deck, and they go anywhere in the field. And then the stand shuffles back to your deck. So you're always adding a stand trigger back to your deck, which can be useful like in your multi-attack turn on one of the strides I'll get to later.
Have you found that the stand trigger has won you some games?
Drive checking the stand trigger, not so much, but using its effect to get multiple copies of a card, yeah, it's definitely won a lot of games. Like, that's why you can't play it at anything less than 4. You want to have it even if it doesn't like work.
And I also noticed no draw triggers.
Like, for this deck, you don't need draw triggers because you're cloning everything for free, so you don't have to play cards from your hand. And because of this starter, it's kind of like you activated 2 draw triggers anyway, because you're adding 2 free cards to your hand. But for grade 1s, you play... Well, I play 4 Stride Enabler, because striding is good, and if you have the wrong grade 3 in your hand, you can use it to search for the right grade 3. That way your deck actually like has a better flow when it's fighting. I really like the Stealth Fiend Lake Diver, because when you're trying to do your multi-attack turns or the restand turn, for a counterblast, it can clone itself up to 2 copies from the deck to any rearguard circle, and then at the end they return back to the bottom at GB1. But it's really useful like when you're fighting against control decks and they ended up killing like your field and you have nothing to do. So you just call it, clone it for a counterblast, and you have 2 copies of a card that can potentially attack from the back row for 9 to like snipe rear guards in the front row. Or if you get lucky enough, you can make them 9 and 9 and then have the card in front of it. If you've already cloned it at the right stride, it'll get an extra 2k. So you can make really strong columns if you set up your board right. 4 of the new Perfect Guard, because well, 1, you don't have to worry about Commander Laurel shenanigans, because most of the time you're going to clone cards for free, and you won't be leaving a card in the front row if it's going to happen to you with Commander Laurel. You'll just send it back to the bottom of the deck. And this deck has a lot of counterblast costs, which is why, like, for one of my grade 2s, I specifically use her, because every time you clone a copy of her from the deck, or anywhere, if you play another copy, the first one out in the field will get an effect plus 2k, I think. Yeah, plus 2k, and she can unflip a counterblast if she hits the opponent's Vanguard. So she kind of solves the counterblast problem, and it also puts some nice pressure on the board for the opponent to like not let it hit. This Generation Break, when boosted, is amazing for the deck. When he's boosted, Generation Break 1, Counterblast 1, you clone himself from the deck to any rearguard circle, and then at the end of the turn, that unit returns to your hand instead of back to the deck. So if you're in certain situations, you can end up adding 5k shield back to your hand more than like what you have, which is also another reason why I don't play draw triggers, because if you're on the right stride, you can clone this card to make an extra attack from that turn, even if it's in the back row. So you end up getting a lot of attacks with this deck. 3 of this Stealth Fiend mate over here. Like, most of the time she's useless. If you want, you don't have to play the Legion, but because you can play the new 12k attacker, which is Generation Break 1. But honestly, like, she's mostly useless. She's literally only like, she's like the best grade 2 ride, because you don't care about, like, the odds of you cloning 2 copies of her from the deck are very slim, because she's at 3. And she's only there to fuel the Legion, so you don't end up missing, and then you have, like, really good columns for, like, later. Then for grade 3s, this is literally the backbone of the deck. With him, you get to do all the good combos. You get to counterblast 1 when you stride, select a unit on your field, and then you clone up to 2 copies of it from the deck. And his Generation Break 2 says, when there's a card sent back to the deck at the end of the turn, you can return up to 1 card that was returned to the bottom back to the field. So essentially, you end up not losing rear guards that you got for free. And then the backup grade 3 is the Stealth Fiend over here. He's literally just there for Legion, because with this deck, a lot of things can go wrong with damage. You'll end up losing like your 3rd copy of a card, and then there's nothing you can do if you can only have 2 copies of a card. So if you need to, you can Legion. It's honestly like the only really good backup other than an old Fighters Collection card, which can help you when you're guarding. But I tried that out. I ended up not liking it. It almost saved me in one game, but I ended up losing because the card restood, kind of like a Crayon Tiger turn.
What about Shirayuki?
Shirayuki's fun for a Shirayuki build, because her stride can add back her copy from the field back to your hand. So you can use Shirayuki's limit break for guarding, but then you end up losing a card from your hand for that grade 3. It's only nice like if you needed it to set up a stride for next turn. But now that we got all these cards out of the way, let me get to the stride deck, which will make like some of these combos like a lot of sense. I'll just get that out of the way. We play 3 of these. His effect is really good. Like, honestly, this is your go-to stride for the entire game. When a copy of a card is placed on the field, if you have two copies of that unit out, the unit that was just placed gets an extra 2k power and an effect where it lets it attack from the back row. So with this deck, like, it's very easy to clone cards, and then you can potentially get multiple attacks like in one turn with this, especially with the Generation Break when boosted. Like, you can end up filling up your field for just Counterblast 2 and hitting the opponent 6 times. The second stride that you have for this deck is Shirayuki stride, actually. Shirayuki stride is actually really good if you don't ride it on Shirayuki, because it'll clone the Vanguard instead, and it'll clone the Vanguard regardless, but when it clones the Vanguard, if you're on the Heartbreak card for this deck, you can end up cloning 2 of that card, and you potentially made cards to attack the front row for free. For nothing. It's really only there for like the control matchup like Kagero, because they can end up killing your cards before you can clone them. So if there's nothing to clone with the Heartbreak, there's no point in like even doing it. But she's a good backup because she'll clone the Vanguard, giving you 1 copy of it. Then you can use the Heartbreak to clone another copy of that. So that gives you 2 units to attack for free that turn. And then finally, like, the last boss for this deck, which I thought was a really nice like change of things for like Murakumo, is their Generation Break, not Generation Break 2, but it's the card where if there's 2 face-up cards in the G zone, it gets the effect to restand. But this card is really good. It's Counterblast 2, which is kind of hefty for this deck, but that's why you have the unflipping perfect cards and the card that unflips Counterblast when you hit. But its effect is, at the end of the battle that it's attacked, you return 3 cards back to the bottom of the deck, then you shuffle. That's the part about the card I don't like, because if you're putting back non-triggers and then you have to shuffle, you can end up like not hitting triggers on his attack, because to do his effect at the main phase, you have to Counterblast 2, and then he loses 1 drive check. So he has Twin Drive at that point. So potentially when you do his restand, you could end up not hitting triggers. Or if you're crazy like me, like one time I actually put back 3 heal triggers and I ended up getting one of them on the 6th. It was really funny. But his restand is really nice for the deck. It's also why this deck has like a problem with the control matchup for Diablo. Because if you're returning 3 cards and they're on Blaster Dark Diablo, they'll end up just killing your 1 card and then you'll end up not being able to guard. But most of the time I don't even stride into this card. I save it for until the opponent's at 5 damage, and then I just hope that they can't double perfect guard me. And that's pretty much it.
But no hype train.
The hype train's too good. Like, you can't, like, the hype train's hard to play with this deck because it has to hit, and then by the time it hits, you already have like enough cards on the board, so you don't need to clone anything. Like, at that point, you're just cloning over cards, and you're just losing cards that you could use later in this game.
Alright, Chris, well, thank you for showcasing your awesome deck here. Hopefully you guys will see it on the channel in some fight videos. I'm your host, Skynet, and that's that.